I had long been devoted to another, yet an imperial decree transformed me into Empress. The day before entering the palace, my beloved invited me out for wine, claiming he wished to see me one last time. I drank the peach blossom wine he personally offered, and blood gushed from my lower body. His face, once filled with deep affection, instantly twisted with disgust and hatred. Did you truly believe I loved you? Only when you can bear no more children will my Yueyao become the most favored woman in the harem. The name Yueyao he spoke was the given name of the current Imperial Consort. That wine was laced with pure safflower, rendering me barren forever and leaving me with a chronic bleeding disorder. After entering the palace, the emperor discovered my hidden ailment and flew into a rage. He immediately forced me to drink a cup of poisoned wine and slaughtered my entire Shen family for the crime of deceiving the sovereign. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day my beloved invited me to drink wine. The young man before me was handsome and dashing, with sword-like brows and starry eyes. His sorrowful eyes fixed on me as he offered the cup of peach blossom wine. Yueyao, this peach blossom wine was brewed especially for you. I'd hoped we could celebrate it at our betrothal banquet after your coming-of-age ceremony. But now it seems, once you enter the palace gates, it's like plunging into the depths of the sea. There's no chance for that anymore. I froze, the concerned face before me overlapping with the one I remembered, filled with disgust. My heart skipped a beat, and my courage faltered. And that cup of wine in his hand was nothing less than a death sentence for me and the entire Shen family. Fighting back nausea, I covered my mouth and nose with a handkerchief and spoke softly, "Second young master Xia, since this wine was meant for our betrothal banquet, its loss is simply its loss. I am now the Empress destined by His Majesty." Second young master Xia should know better than to invite suspicion. Then, I gave a subtle signal to Zizhu behind me. Zizhu understood immediately and hurriedly pulled my hand away. "Miss, it's all my fault. I forgot, the chests brought into the palace still need your personal inspection. You must go check them now." I rose and walked away, leaving him behind with a look of utter shock. In my previous life, after being given the poison wine, I had frantically kowtowed to the emperor, begging for mercy. The reason was simple, my own death held no terror for me. I only wanted the emperor to spare the hundreds of lives of my Shen family. I kowtowed until my head was bloody, explaining over and over. I said I had eaten something wrong, which had caused my illness. But the emperor, seeing the bloodstains on my nightgown, declared I had lost my virtue before entering the palace, that my body was unclean. He was convinced my father had sent me to the palace to humiliate him. The emperor said he hated the chancellor's control over him. He was the son of heaven. When he was young, he naturally needed his father's assistance in governing. But now he was fully capable of ruling alone. My father had overstepped his bounds. So it turned out he had long harbored resentment toward my father, the chancellor. But if that was the case, why did he lavish praise upon my father before the court officials, declaring, "The nation cannot exist a single day without the chancellor"? Yueyao, standing beside him, stifled a giggle and poured fuel on the fire. "This servant has heard that before entering the palace, Shen Yueyao had a handsome beloved. As for what truly transpired behind the scenes, your majesty, who can say for certain?" Thus, amidst the emperor's fury and the imperial consort's mockery, palace attendants forcibly pried my mouth open. A cup of poisoned wine was forced down my throat. Agonizing pain sent my hairpins flying, sweat soaked my robes, and I swiftly succumbed to the excruciating torment. My aunt, the Empress Dowager, arrived too late. By the time she reached the chamber, His Majesty and the Imperial Consort had already departed. Palace attendants were dragging my body out, intending to dispose of it at the mass grave by nightfall. Tears streaming down her face, she threw herself upon my corpse, wailing loudly, "Yueyao, you fool! How could you and your father so recklessly tarnish the imperial family's honor? The world judges deeds, not intentions. Even if you cherished your beloved deeply, how could you commit such foolish acts of private exchange?" Alas, I was already dead, unable to clear my name. My spirit drifted before her, desperately pleading my case, and Yueyao did not. After drinking at Xia Yan's banquet that day, I bled uncontrollably. He had long vanished. The physician treated me through the night and declared I could never conceive. The most troubling symptom, the persistent bleeding, the physician said he could prescribe medicine to temporarily stop the discharge. But I had to enter the palace early the next morning. My parents had no choice. To refuse would have been a grave crime of disobeying the imperial decree. I intended to later inform His Majesty of my physical impairment and inability to conceive. But the tea served by a palace attendant before the imperial bedchamber caused my bleeding to start again uncontrollably, which is when His Majesty grew suspicious. Yet no matter how I explained, my aunt refused to hear. My spirit drifted through the palace. Days later, His Majesty made a grand spectacle of the matter. He declared the Empress had compromised her private virtue and was unfit to be the mother of the realm. The Shen family, he declared, had deliberately humiliated the imperial house, an act of treason. A single imperial decree fell, and not a single soul among the Shen family's hundreds was spared. Blood flowed like a river. Now, seated in the sedan chair returning to the mansion, I clutched a silk handkerchief so tightly it threatened to tear. I understood clearly, having shared in the glory of the Shen clan, I must bear the price it demanded. In my previous life, I never wished to see Xianji again. Seeing him beg me so humbly, I didn't want to break his heart. Xianji treated me exceptionally well. He was the perfect husband in my eyes. That day, he poured me a full cup of his personally brewed peach blossom wine and fed it to me. Amid his expectant gaze, I thought, drinking this cup would sever our ties. But the moment I swallowed it, his expression changed. The deep love from moments before vanished instantly, replaced by eyes filled with cruelty and coldness. Seeing me clutching my lower abdomen in agony, he laughed and revealed the truth. My kindness toward you stemmed from what I'd long heard, that the late emperor secretly left an imperial edict, designating you as Empress upon reaching adulthood. I thought that if you fell for me and bore my child, you'd never enter the palace. But then, my Duke Ding's household would surely suffer repercussions. Better to ruin you now, make the emperor despise you, so my true love can forever enjoy supreme honor. You're crying like this. Don't tell me you actually thought I loved you? Whoever becomes Empress, I will find a way to destroy her. Unless the throne is occupied by my Yueyao. See how much I love my Yueyao? For her happiness, I would clear every obstacle from her path. I was already too numb with pain to speak. He left me with a pale blue silhouette, departing with effortless grace. He left, yet he left me trapped in a dead end, casually ruining my entire life. A gentle breeze stirred, carrying the sweet fragrance of osmanthus blossoms through the sedan curtain, refreshing the soul. My eyes held a coldness as deep as the abyss. Xianji, for your true love Yueyao, you have not only harmed me but destroyed my entire Shen family. Between us lies a blood-soaked enmity, a sea of hatred deep enough to drown hundreds of corpses. In this lifetime, you still wish to remain untouched, to let your white moonlight alone bask in imperial favor, reveling in unparalleled glory and splendor? Alas, you shall be disappointed. The next day, I ascended the splendid imperial carriage of the Empress, entering the palace gates in a grand procession. Under the gaze of the entire palace, clad in the most splendid imperial yellow robes, I stepped forward toward the emperor. From his hands, I received the Empress's seal of authority, the symbol of power. As the legitimate daughter of the Chancellor, my every movement was poised and graceful, without a single flaw. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Consort Yueyao below the dais staring at me intently. Her beautiful, slightly upturned phoenix eyes betrayed no attempt to conceal her hostility toward me. Yueyao was indeed a vision of beauty, her alluring eyes as deep as water, truly captivating enough to topple a kingdom. Unlike the consort's ostentatious beauty, I possessed an ethereal grace, my skin as smooth as jade, radiant like a lotus emerging from water. Having just reached the age of coming of age, I possessed bright eyes and a dazzling smile, embodying the most beautiful years of youth. I offered a faint smile, my vermilion lips curving gently upward. I knew my own beauty. No wonder Consort Yueyao felt threatened. And Xianji? He was merely a blade she had long since sharpened and placed at her disposal. In my previous life, the emperor harbored suspicion toward my father's position as chancellor. Thus, his humiliation of me was but a pretext. The true intent was to eradicate the entire Shen clan. While the late emperor lived, grateful for all my father had done for him, he specially conferred upon my father the title of chancellor. Half of the peaceful and prosperous reign of the Song dynasty was the result of my father's painstaking planning. To preserve the honor of the Shen family, the late emperor specially left an imperial edict, designating me to be the empress of his son. Even if I had been unharmed at that time, he would have found another reason to eliminate the Shen family. However, I will not give the emperor this opportunity again. Last night, father and I spoke long into the night by candlelight. He has resolved to resign his post and return to our homeland. Compared to life itself, wealth and honor hold little weight. I sit here in the resplendent phoenix resting palace, awaiting the emperor's arrival. Yet how long he will remain, I cannot say. In my previous life, before entering the palace, my tutor had told me that the Imperial Consort was the most favored concubine within the palace walls. The emperor, bound by the late emperor's decree, could only crown me Empress. Yet throughout the palace, it was said that the emperor's true wife was none other than Imperial Consort Yueyao. She was the emperor's childhood sweetheart. Her aunt was the former consort Rong, now the dowager consort Rong. Consort Rong had suffered the loss of a child, leaving her heart heavy with sorrow. To win a smile from consort Rong, the late emperor specially ordered her niece, Yueyao, to enter the palace as her companion. Yueyao's background was rather complicated. Her mother had been betrothed by the late emperor to the Khan of the northern frontier as a peace offering, which led to Yueyao's birth. Yueyao carried the bloodline of the Khan of the northern frontier. Later, the Khan of the northern frontier met an untimely death after falling from his horse. Thanks to the then consort Rong's intercession, the late emperor brought her and her daughter back to the capital. The emperor's birth mother was a disgraced consort who later died in the cold palace. As a child, the emperor was neglected and suffered harsh treatment from palace servants, sometimes even being given spoiled food. Yueyao, raised in the desert, possessed a fiery and straightforward temperament. While in the palace, she once witnessed several maids mistreating the young prince and immediately intervened to rescue him. With Yueyao's protection, his life in the palace improved significantly. Gradually, she fell in love with this stubborn young man. And the emperor, in turn, grew deeply attached to this radiant woman. She was the light that pierced the darkness in his heart. Alas, even if the beginning was perfect, who could guarantee the ending? I sighed, straightening my slightly stooped back. The weight of the jeweled ornaments and phoenix crown pressed painfully on my shoulders, yet I maintained the most dignified posture possible. Zizhu immediately stepped forward, asking if I would wait for the emperor to arrive. I gave a light, unconcerned laugh. Wait? Of course I would wait. At the grand wedding of the emperor and empress, I refused to believe he would snub the empress's face by even missing the wedding night. He would come. Sure enough, moments later, a flash of imperial yellow lifted my veil. In the flickering lamplight, I revealed a bashful smile, my delicate brows arching, making me all the more captivating. With my father's influence gone, he seemed to hold more affection for me. After drinking the union wine, he sat on the bed piled high with wedding quilts, and we sat in silence, neither speaking. But the next moment, before I could break the awkwardness, Yueyao's senior palace maid hurried in with news. The Imperial Consort had drunk too much and accidentally sprained her ankle, pleading for the emperor to come see her. Upon hearing this, the emperor dashed out the palace gates like a whirlwind, leaving me alone on the bed with only his retreating figure. Zizhu immediately protested on my behalf, but I couldn't care less. Yueyao and the emperor shared decades of affection. Her place in his heart was naturally extraordinary. Overturning her would take more than a day or two. So why should I dwell on a momentary setback? Recalling that the Shen family was now safe, my heart felt at ease. I had Zizhu extinguish the lamps and candles, then slept soundly through the night. The next day, all the consorts came to pay their respects at my Phoenix Nest Palace. They were all daughters of officials thrust into the harem by the Empress Dowager. Alas, they scarcely saw the emperor even once a year. I acknowledged each of them personally, then had my maids bestow generous gifts upon them. Only the seat for consort Yueyao remained empty. Consort Xiao, seated beside me, voiced her indignation. Her arrogance is one thing, she said, but arriving so late before Her Majesty the Empress today shows utter disregard for the Imperial Consort. I offered a faint smile, telling her not to fret, justice would prevail in the hearts of the people. After several rounds of tea with them, Consort Yueyao still hadn't appeared to pay her respects. As the other consorts began whispering among themselves, I dismissed them outright, instructing them to kneel in farewell and return to their quarters to rest. This, of course, was deliberate. The more the Imperial Consort Yueyao acted with arrogance and tyranny, the more I would conduct myself with dignity and propriety. She could recklessly seek the Emperor's favor. Alas, the Imperial family is the most heartless of all. An Emperor's affection can grant you splendor in a single day, yet strip you of your head in the next. Therefore, what I always sought was the most reliable power. Only power can endure forever. Word soon spread throughout the palace that the Imperial Consort, emboldened by favor, had even skipped the formal morning greetings to the Empress. Upon hearing this, the Dowager Empress sent her personal attendant to visit me, bestowing upon me various treasured gifts, pearls, gold, jade, phoenix hairpins, to soothe the grievances caused by the Imperial Consort. Even as Empress, I bowed respectfully before the aunt who had served the Empress Dowager for decades. Of course, this gesture was meant for the Empress Dowager's aunt to see. Love is nothing. If you can make someone ache for you, that is the highest form of open strategy. Sure enough, after the Empress Dowager's subtle warning, the Emperor came to dine with me just days later. He explained that he'd been distraught upon hearing the Imperial Consort had sprained her ankle, which was why he'd left me waiting all night. I shook my head, signaling he needn't worry, then gently placed a piece of chicken with chestnuts onto his chopsticks. Looking up at him, I offered a radiant smile. I saw clearly the momentary daze in his eyes, a flicker of astonishment. It was only natural. After my rebirth, I'd practiced the smile countless times. Whenever the Emperor was absent, I'd stand before the bronze mirror, seeking the most flattering angle to perfect that most captivating smile. And today, dressed in simple, plain-colored garments, I appeared even more pure and endearing, evoking pity and affection. They say spring rain nourishes silently. A person's heart, exposed to such pervasive, meticulous attention, would eventually surrender. I, of course, was in no hurry. After all, someone else would be more impatient than I. Sure enough, before the evening meal was finished, the Imperial Consort suffered another sudden bout of palpitations. Her chief lady-in-waiting knelt on the floor, sobbing and sniffling as she begged the Emperor to attend to the consort, yet her eyes held not a shred of remorse. After all, both she and the Empress Consort knew the Emperor would inevitably leave me behind to attend to his beloved consort. The Emperor glanced at me, a flicker of guilt in his eyes, and tightened his grip on my hand. I took a handkerchief and gently dabbed his lips, speaking softly, "The Empress Consort is unwell, Your Majesty. You should go see her." The Emperor hadn't expected me to be so understanding, and a touch of embarrassment flushed his face. His gaze toward me held an extra measure of approval. He patted my shoulder and followed the senior palace maid out. Before he departed, I draped his cloak over his shoulders, mentioning the strong wind outside and my concern he might catch a chill. As I leaned close to him, my delicate hand inadvertently brushed against his solid chest, and my ears instantly flushed crimson. I quickly lowered my head, pretending not to dare look at him, but I knew he was watching me. I could feel his gaze growing increasingly intense. Then I urged him to hurry off, not to keep the Imperial Consort waiting. As he left, he suddenly turned back and gave me a meaningful look. "See? The fish has taken the bait." After the Emperor visited Consort Yueyao's palace, he didn't return to Fengqi Palace for nearly half a month. And Consort Yueyao never came to pay her respects either. When the other consorts came to greet me, their eyes held hurt, pity, and wonder. Naturally, some also watched me with schadenfreude. Yet I merely cracked sunflower seeds with them, chatted about family matters, and even joined them in admiring flowers during idle moments. Gazing at the vibrant blooms in the imperial garden, I softly recited a verse, "Flowers never bloom for 100 days. If flowers are thus, how much more so for people?" My calm demeanor, however, earned me the Empress Dowager's deep admiration. In her eyes, I was not only her niece by marriage but also an empress who seldom succumbed to jealousy, even managing to get along with all the other consorts. Faced with the stubborn consort Gui, I never quarreled with her. When I heard she suffered from palpitations, I even had the imperial physician examine her several times. Even though the entire harem knew she was feigning it. Thus, the Empress Dowager, my aunt, grew ever more fond of me. When I paid my respects at her palace a few days ago, she clasped my hand tightly, repeatedly praising the late emperor's foresight. Tonight, as the emperor's carriage passed by Fengqi Palace, he saw many sparkling fireflies. In the pitch-black night, the fireflies flickered and shimmered, as bright as stars. Hearing the sound of a zither from within, the emperor gently pushed open the door of Fengqi Palace. What met his eyes was Siju accompanying me on the zither, while I, clad in sheer gauze, danced amidst the fireflies. Wearing moonwhite, flowing gauze, my hair styled like the divine maiden Luotian in paintings, I held a blue lotus in my hand and danced gracefully under the moonlight, resembling the celestial Chang'e. The emperor was utterly transfixed. His eyes were fixed on me. Though I had noticed his presence long ago, I pretended not to see, utterly absorbed in my dance. My dance drew the moon low over the willow-lined pavilion, my song exhausted the breeze beneath the peach blossom fan. When the dance ended, he clapped his hands, showering me with praise. Yet I, like a startled bird, instantly reverted to my earlier fragile, pitiful self, bowing in panic. My hairpin slipped, releasing my dark tresses to cascade over my shoulders and neck, accentuating my delicate, jade-like features. He strode swiftly to my side and swept me up in his arms. Inhaling the lily fragrance on my skin, his gaze grew fiercer. He then closed the palace doors, and the attendants, knowing when to leave, withdrew. "Empress, I owe you a wedding night." Like the first rain on blooming begonia, a few delicate blossoms seemed to whisper. The emperor appeared somewhat restrained, taking me with wild abandon. I clung tightly to him, saying nothing. Afterwards, he held me close, twirling a lock of my dark hair around his finger. I lifted my head, my eyes wet and doe-like, gazing at him with childlike innocence. For a fleeting moment, I saw a flicker of tenderness in his eyes. The next second, he sprang up from the bed. Understanding, I swiftly dressed him in his bright yellow robe and smoothed his slightly disheveled sideburns. Seeing my calm expression, his departing figure paused. "Empress, I promised the noble consort I would visit her palace." Before he could finish, I feigned coyness, quickly planting a peck on his cheek, then offered a gentle smile. "Your Majesty is the wise ruler of all under heaven, and all the people are your subjects. As Empress, I understand the duty of supporting the Emperor. Maintaining harmony within the harem is my responsibility, and I dare not forget my role." Then I clasped his hand tightly. In the flickering candlelight, I looked like a fairy from a painting. "In this palace, your Majesty may always do as you wish. I will always obey you. You need not worry. Go see the noble consort now." Seeing my understanding, a flicker of emotion crossed the emperor's face before he left Fengqi Palace. Yet even the most exquisite flower, viewed daily, will eventually lose its charm. And the alluring peony, gazed upon too long, pales beside the pure, endearing white orchid. His Majesty's visits to my palace grew ever more frequent. Each time, I would envelop his simmering anger with trembling tenderness. He would arrive with a hint of melancholy, yet depart with a face radiant with contentment and delight. You see, to capture a man's heart, tenderness is always the ultimate weapon. How else could it be said that the blade of gentleness cuts through the very soul? The Imperial Consort gradually noticed that the Emperor grew increasingly unable to perform between the sheets with her. Indeed, though he never stayed overnight during his visits to me, I always found a way to exhaust him completely. As astute as she was, how could the Imperial Consort fail to notice the signs? Though she had never before consulted the records of the Imperial bedchamber, she now ordered them brought directly to her for personal review. Seeing the name Shen written over and over again, her fury ignited. With her fiery temper, how could she conceal her displeasure? Soon, word spread that during the Emperor and the Imperial Consort's midday meal, they had first bickered, then erupted into a full-blown quarrel. When Siju reported this to me, her face was aglow with delight. She said the palace maids were whispering that this was the first time the Emperor had ever quarreled with the Imperial Consort, and also the first time he had failed to appease her, storming out of her Yueyao palace in a huff. Watching Ziju's beaming face, I merely smiled faintly before instructing her to light the Suhexiang incense for me. This incense was the Emperor's favorite. Whenever it burned, I would always place a few slices of pear upon it. Soon, the scent of pear filled the room, a crisp, faintly sweet fragrance permeating the entire Phoenix Nest Palace. If all went as expected, the Emperor would arrive shortly. However, before the Emperor could come, the Imperial Consort arrived first. Her attendants rudely pushed open the gates of Phoenix Nest Palace while I was dressing. Long strands of hair cascaded to the floor. The The small lattice window stood half open, allowing a gentle breeze to sweep through, lifting a few strands of my hair lightly. Dressed in moonlit gauze, barefoot, I was as beautiful as a painting. She stared at me, her eyes filled with jealousy and fury, her hands trembling slightly. I didn't even ask her to bow. Instead, I walked barefoot past her and began preparing the lychees the emperor loved. I gently picked up plump lychees one by one. Peeling them revealed perfectly round, crystal-clear flesh that was truly delightful. But the next moment, the entire tray of freshly peeled lychees was pushed to the floor, scattering everywhere. I panicked instantly, my heart aching as I knelt down to pick them up one by one. The Empress, kneeling to pick up lychees? Naturally, it was intentional. The palace attendants nearby had long been restrained by the Imperial Consort's maids. They kept their heads bowed, unable to bear witness to my humiliation. Kneeling barefoot on the ground, my outer robe slipped down, revealing my delicate collarbone and the unspeakable bruise on my neck. Yueyao saw it and instantly flew into a rage. She lunged forward, her eyes bloodshot as she grabbed my throat. I just stared at her, tears of terror streaming down my face, unable to utter a word. She laughed bitterly at my cowering, then grew even more vicious. Stop pretending. I detest such hypocritical little vixens. What are you playing at, innocence, to win the emperor's favor? What does being empress matter? You're merely his passing fancy. He swore, to be united as mandarin fish, death holds no fear, to be mated mandarin ducks, we'd scorn the immortals. He vowed to love only me this lifetime. I'll see who can protect you today, with Song Huijin absent. Next, a slap landed squarely on my face, leaving 5 stark fingerprints on my snow-white skin. All the palace attendants gasped, holding their breath in shock. Barging into the Empress's chambers was bad enough, but striking the Empress herself. This wasn't just arrogance and insolence, it was a crime punishable by death for 9 generations. The next slap was about to fall. I closed my eyes tightly. In my mind, I counted the seconds. Soon. Very soon. Sure enough, a pair of hands stopped her. A flash of bright yellow before my eyes gripped her wrists tightly, his face clearly showing 7 parts anger. Consort, she is my empress. How dare you overstep your bounds? The consort glared at the emperor, but seeing his resolute protection of me, a single tear suddenly fell, and she slowly backed down. She released her grip, turned away as if wilted, the vibrant energy she'd arrived with suddenly gone. The emperor looked at me, anxiously cupping my face, asking if I was badly hurt. I threw myself into his embrace, large tears splashing onto his face, biting my lower lip hard. Finally, I clutched his robe, my voice soft and trembling with tears as I called him Brother Song in my tender, childlike voice. Sure enough, I felt a sudden flutter in a certain part of his body. And his gaze, which had been filled with pity, now held a hint of desire. The Imperial Consort, hearing me call the Emperor Brother Song, flared up again instantly, her composure shattered. Without a second thought, she smashed every jewel and artifact in my palace. The precious calligraphy and paintings the Emperor had painstakingly sought for me were torn to shreds in mere moments. Before the Emperor and others could react, she left Fengqi Palace in a whirlwind, uttering only, Song Huijin, you can only be mine. As for me, clutching a plate of lychees I'd gathered from the floor, I knelt barefoot at his feet, tears welling from heartache. Brother Song, it's all Yunshu's fault. I couldn't even protect the lychees you love most. He sighed, ruffled my hair, then lifted me up as he sighed helplessly, you silly little thing, you truly break my heart. You are the Empress of the Central Palace, how could you let the Imperial Consort strike you? Such a great injustice, if I hadn't been there, would you have endured it alone? I gazed up at him, burying my face tightly against his chest before speaking in a timid, coy voice, Yunshu only knows that sister is the apple of Brother Song's eye. So even if I'm deeply wronged, I don't want to put brother in a difficult position. Brother Song, please don't take your anger out on sister because of this, okay? I knew what he truly desired was the submission of everyone. Even if the radiant Imperial Consort once held a place in his heart. But now he was the emperor of this realm. He would never tolerate a woman challenging his authority. Sure enough, his brows softened slightly, his gaze upon me gentle as flowing water. When will the Imperial Consort ever learn to be as sensible as Yunshu? He laid me upon the bed, gently tracing the swollen cheek, then held me tightly. Then, he abruptly pulled aside the beaded curtain and pressed an eager kiss to my lips. "Yunshu, would you bear me a child?" Of course, I would not bear him a child. On the very night I entered the palace, I took contraceptive medicine. I would not conceive for 3 years. However, those who desired children were plentiful within the palace walls. This was his first night spent in my palace. From that day forward, he lodged in my chambers with even greater abandon. Each month, when I experienced discomfort, I would arrange for the emperor to visit other consorts. The noble consort, however, was confined to her quarters for a month. Yet her flute playing was truly exquisite. How could such talent be wasted? A few days later, as the emperor passed by, the noble consort played but a single piece, "Longing for You," and effortlessly captured his heart. The emperor pushed open the gates of the palace of eternal peace. That day, he never emerged again, instead staying with the noble consort for 7 consecutive days. When Zizhu told me, I was practicing calligraphy. On sheets of Shen paper, large and small, there was only one character: quiet. Beside them lay various history books, each half-read. In the emperor's absence, I found great joy in brewing tea and practicing calligraphy. Alone, I felt utterly free and unrestrained. I also frequently visited the palace of my aunt, the Empress Dowager. Yet this did not mean I turned a deaf ear to the world beyond the palace walls. When the secret letter arrived from outside the palace, I had just finished reading the passage from the Book of Documents: "The human heart is perilous, the heart of truth is subtle, only through diligence and single-mindedness can one uphold the middle way." No sooner had I tossed the secret letter into the brazier, watching it turn to ash, than consort Yueyao arrived with the emperor and other consorts. The moment she saw me, her shrill voice echoed throughout the bedchamber: "The audacious Empress Shen Yunshu dares to seduce the son of the Duke of Dingwa, plotting illicit affairs to corrupt the harem." Watching her lose her mind like this, I couldn't help but frown. That Xiaoyinji fellow, before I could decide how to deal with him, he'd already lost his composure. Or rather, the Imperial Consort was afraid for the first time. She was terrified that someone might truly steal the emperor's favor. So she panicked. So desperate she'd sacrifice even Xiaoyinji, who loved her most, to eliminate me. I smiled faintly, tilting my head playfully as I looked at the emperor. "Brother Song, what is the Imperial Consort saying?" Yunshu doesn't quite understand. Doesn't Brother Song know who holds the deepest place in Yunshu's heart? Song Huajin's eyes darkened, as if he wanted to say something, but Yueyao, quick-witted and outspoken, cut in: "The Empress, of all people, has no shame. She dares to plan secret meetings with her former lover. If not for the unwavering loyalty of the second young master of the Dingwa Duke's household, wouldn't you have turned the entire harem upside down by now? Your Majesty, Yueyao, may be a bit headstrong, but my devotion to you is as clear as day. Unlike certain individuals who feign innocence and purity while secretly seducing your ministers, shameless and wicked." Zizhu flushed crimson with urgency, wanting to speak for me, but I motioned for her to step back. I set down the book I'd just finished reading and approached the emperor with measured steps, bowing respectfully. Then, turning to the Imperial Consort, I asked directly: "Consort, I have always respected you, addressing you as sister because you entered the palace long before me and have served His Majesty for so many years. But sister, with your constant accusations of seduction and illicit affairs, anyone unaware might mistake this place not for the imperial harem, but for some brothel or tavern. Sister, if you accuse me of consorting with outsiders, where is your evidence?" A flicker of smugness flashed in Yueyao's eyes before she signaled a servant to present a letter. It was handwritten by Xiaoyinji, stating that yesterday, just after he entered the palace to see His Majesty, I sent someone to invite him to the Lake Island for a reunion. Upon hearing this, he was utterly terrified and hastily informed the emperor. I stared at this paper, unable to stop laughing, as if witnessing the most ridiculous farce imaginable. The Imperial Consort frowned, as if looking at a fool. She then impatiently clapped her hands. An unfamiliar young palace maid hurriedly knelt, crying out in protest: "Your Majesty, Imperial Consort, this servant knows nothing." Seeing Her Majesty the Empress troubled and anxious that day, I merely followed orders to seek out Xiaoyinji. Her Majesty the Empress even instructed this servant to deliver his personal handkerchief to him. Emperor Song Huajin's face darkened with anger upon hearing this, his gaze toward me growing more probing. I looked at the palace maid, then turned directly to the emperor, kneeling without rising. Your Majesty, this palace maid has only recently arrived at Fengqi Palace. I have scarcely seen her. According to Zizhu, she previously served Your Majesty's noble consort Ling, who is the Imperial Consort's own cousin. As this concerns my reputation, I must investigate thoroughly. I implore Your Majesty to search the young palace maid's quarters. You will surely find clues to prove my innocence. Kneeling there, my hair was slightly disheveled. Tears fell silently, my eyes like pools of autumn water. My entire being resembled a small flower battered by waves, desperately needing something to cling to. Seeing me like this, a flicker of tenderness instantly appeared in the emperor's eyes. I knew he adored this feeling of being relied upon. It was deeply gratifying to him, accustomed as he was to towering above all. Yes, he was an emperor, but first and foremost, he was a man. A man who craved a woman's adoration. Just then, the Empress Dowager hurried in. Seeing me kneeling, she pulled me up immediately. She turned to the emperor, her words brimming with reproach. She accused me of spending every day lately in her palace practicing calligraphy and reading books, practically living there. How could I possibly have time for secret trysts with men? Soon after, several palace attendants searched the young palace maid's quarters and found a few letters and several hundred taels of silver. The letters detailed how she had framed me, stealing my handkerchief and passing it to Xiaoyanji. Etched beneath the silver was a tiny Su character. It was official silver from the Su household. The young palace maid stared at me in disbelief upon seeing this. She immediately knelt, clutching consort Su Yueyao's robe and begging for mercy. A flicker of panic finally appeared in the Imperial Consort's eyes. The next moment, she fixed her gaze firmly on me, her expression complex as she spoke slowly. Your Majesty, since this matter demands caution, why not summon Xiaoyanji? Let him and the Empress converse properly. Thus, whether there exists any private affair between them will become clear at a glance. The Emperor granted her request. Xiaoyanji soon arrived at Fengqi Palace. His gaze upon me held only a faint, cold detachment, even a hint of murderous intent flickering beneath. I sat calmly in my seat, sipping my tea slowly. He knelt, unable to rise, declaring that though we had been childhood sweethearts, he had severed all feelings for me upon learning I would enter the palace. Yet I, he claimed, continued to tease him with subtle, ambiguous advances. Even now, upon his entry into the palace, I sought to rekindle our former bond. He acknowledged his guilt, yet vowed to defend the emperor's honor with his very life. Watching his performance, a barely perceptible smile touched my lips. I'd planned to deal with Xiaoyanji after the consort descended the stage, but since he was so eager to meet his end, I'd grant his wish. I glanced at him, my eyes brimming with contempt. For the sake of his beloved woman, I was to become a living sacrificial offering? That wasn't fair. Not fair at all. So, feigning panic, I blurted out, is it the Xie family's tradition to make baseless accusations? Since my father resigned his post, does that mean the Shen family can be trampled upon? I was never childhood sweethearts with young Master Xie, so where does this notion of innocent childhood affection come from? But I do know this, the one who holds the dearest place in young Master Xie's heart is not me, but someone else entirely. Upon hearing this, both the Imperial Consort and Xiaoyanji's expressions shifted noticeably. I had long known the deepest, most hidden affair in Xiaoyanji's heart. Naturally, this knowledge came from the previous life, when Xiaoyanji himself confessed it to me while feeding me the red flower. Seeing the flicker of panic in their eyes, I felt a surge of satisfaction. It was time to fan the flames even higher. Seeing young Master Xie today reminds me of those rumors. I hear the only true love in his heart belongs to Her Imperial Highness the Consort. You're lying. The consort and Xiaoyanji spoke in unison, their voices identical. Xiaoyanji stormed before me, his eyes seething with suppressed fury, as if he wished to devour me alive. But my next light-hearted remark sealed his fate. If your Majesty doubts this, simply remove Xiaoyanji's upper garment. One look will prove it. This humble servant has heard that Xiaoyanji bears the name of his most beloved upon his chest. Upon hearing this, Xiaoyanji lifted his head in disbelief, his eyes filled with terror. The next moment, the emperor strode before him, fixing him with a piercing stare. His expression darkened to a terrifying intensity as he nodded to the palace attendants. The attendants restrained Yueyao, who struggled desperately to resist, and stripped off his upper garment. At this moment, Consort Yueyao remained unaware of the impending danger, her expression tinged with tension and confusion. When Yueyao's chest was exposed before the emperor froze. The tea in the consort's mouth sprayed out in a torrent. His gaze immediately turned to Yueyao, brimming with naked, unadulterated murderous intent. For tattooed across his chest were 4 characters. My wife, Yueyao. Yueyao was Yueyao's childhood nickname. The emperor's face darkened. I quickly knelt down, and the palace attendants followed suit. The emperor picked up a dagger nearby and walked unhurriedly toward the Imperial Consort. The Imperial Consort, now panicked, knelt directly at the emperor's feet. She cried that it was all Yueyao's audacity, that he dared covet her, and that his crime was unforgivable. The emperor lifted the Imperial Consort's face, gently caressing it, yet his eyes held none of their former affection. He tossed aside the dagger, his words icy, "Kill him. I shall believe in your innocence." The entire hall fell deathly silent. Only the strained, suppressed breaths of the crowd could be heard. Yueyao trembled as she picked up the dagger and slowly approached Yueyao. Yueyao gazed at Yueyao before him, a faint smile flickering across his face. Closing his eyes, he spoke softly, "Do it." Yueyao hesitated for a moment, then raised her sleeve high and plunged the dagger fiercely into Yueyao's body. Yueyao collapsed with a thud. Yueyao froze in terror, collapsing to the floor. The next moment, Yueyao's body was carried out by palace attendants. The bloodstains on the floor were quickly washed away. So clean it seemed as if nothing had ever happened. Yes. After my death in the previous life, my spirit had witnessed Yueyao and Yueyao celebrating with wine. To express his love for Yueyao, he tore open his chest, revealing those few small characters. Yueyao turned pale with fright on the spot, urging him to remove it immediately. I had long planned to use this tattoo as a trap, luring you right into it. Yueyao, the one you cherish most will one day be your undoing. I gave a soft cough. Behind me, Ziju slipped away unnoticed. The emperor approached, gently lifting me up, his face filled with regret. "Yunshu, I have caused you such hardship." I threw myself into the emperor's embrace, tears spilling freely down my face. Glancing at Yueyao, who stood dazed and defeated, a faint smile touched my lips. I spoke softly, "Your Majesty is a wise ruler. I know you will clear my name. Therefore, I feel no wrong." Watching the emperor and me so affectionate, the Imperial Consort's face darkened instantly. Suddenly, she seemed to me like a withered flower. Her exterior might still be radiant, but inside, she was already rotten. The Imperial Consort was confined to her quarters once more. Only this time, it wasn't for a month, it was without imperial decree, she may not leave. His Majesty spent every night in my palace, and I burned that Sohexiang incense daily, he found it most soothing. I removed his crown and massaged the pressure points on his head. Each time, he would hold my hand, his face radiant with contentment. "This place feels best, Empress. Every moment spent here, even without a word between us, brings me peace. You make me happy." "Humph, you dog of a man. You must have said that to Yueyao too, 100 times? 1,000 times? Too bad you can't fool me. Still, in my palace, you are happy. And in the days to come, I fear I'll make you even happier." Yet just 2 months later, after court had dismissed, the emperor rushed once more to the Imperial Consort's quarters. Yueyao was with child. When the news arrived, I was copying Buddhist scriptures for the Empress Dowager. She said I resembled her greatly, especially in temperament, we were practically identical. After hearing Yueyao's news, the Empress Dowager asked my opinion. I remained silent, instead writing a few lines on paper. The ancient masters of warfare first made themselves invincible, then waited for the enemy's vulnerability. Upon reading them, she nodded approvingly, remarking that though I was barely a teenager, I possessed a maturity befitting an old woman like herself. She spoke of how, after her elder sister married my father, he endured great hardship for the sake of state affairs and the people. She had believed her foster son, now the emperor, would be a good ruler. But she had once dreamt that the emperor had killed her sister and the entire Shen family. She herself had been suspected by the emperor, who ultimately poisoned her wine. She died on a winter day. The Empress Dowager clasped my hand tightly, her eyes brimming with pity. The next moment, she shook her head and said, "This is not enough," then added several large characters, "Opportunities are fleeting, once lost, they never return." I met her calm gaze and knew the time had come. After casting the net for so long, it was time to reel in the catch. The Imperial Consort's child could not be saved. The Imperial physician said it was due to pent-up emotions causing an unstable pulse, making miscarriage highly likely. When the Emperor, the Empress Dowager, and I rushed to the scene, medicinal soup was spilled across the floor. Yueyao, clad only in her undergarments, her hair disheveled, clung to the Emperor's embrace, weeping with heart-wrenching grief. Indeed, she had accompanied the Emperor into the palace for years, bringing him the most joy, yet remained childless, her deepest torment. This pregnancy, hard one, was guarded with utmost care. Her daily meals, clothing, and movements were scrutinized layer upon layer, leaving no room for error. But how could this child be lost? Her face twisted in grief, her eyes suddenly darted toward me. Then, her expression contorted into fury as she lunged at me. "It's all your fault, Shen Shu. You must have done something. Otherwise, my child would still be safe. It's all your fault. All your fault." The Emperor, seeing this, quickly grabbed her and pulled her into his arms. His face filled with sorrow as he comforted her, word by word, "Yueyao, don't cry. We will have children again. I promise you, I will give you another child. Is that all right?" Hearing this, I immediately covered my mouth with a handkerchief. Another second, and I feared I'd burst out laughing. Men are truly laughable. They lie without blinking, sweet-talking people with their smooth lines. "Yueyao, don't be foolish. You will never have a child." The Emperor comforted Yueyao for a long time. Only when she cried herself to exhaustion did she slowly drift off to sleep. I approached and touched the Emperor's hand, signaling him to stay with the consort. Then I helped the Empress Dowager downstairs. Several nights later, the Emperor suffered another outburst at Yueyao's quarters. I heard he nearly shattered the jade pendant he'd bestowed upon her as a token of affection. The Emperor came to my chambers, but I pretended to be asleep. He ended up spending the night in the Hall of Mental Cultivation. After His Majesty departed, I slipped on a cloak and slipped out under cover of night to Yueyao's Weiyang Palace. True to its name, it was resplendent with gold and splendor. Especially after her miscarriage, the Emperor, grieving for her, had bestowed upon her all manner of rare and precious treasures. She lay on her bed, visibly thinner, her former haughty arrogance completely gone. Spotting me, she struggled to sit up and summoned her attendants. I sat down quietly on a chair and explained that the Empress Dowager had been practicing Buddhism lately, so the temple needed dusting. Her attendants were all sent away and wouldn't return for a while. She snorted coldly, then put on that haughty expression, as if I were her servant. I chuckled softly and got straight to the point. "Xianji is dead. Are you grieving?" She froze, clearly surprised I'd brought him up. But the next moment, she shot me a withering glance, her voice feigning strength. "A mere young master from a minor noble house dared covet the Emperor's favorite concubine. His death was no loss. He alone nurtured those unwarranted desires. From start to finish, he was merely my puppet. Whatever I commanded, he obeyed. Such a fine blade, wouldn't it be a shame not to use it?" I traced the jeweled ornaments adorning her hair, spotting a phoenix hairpin I favored. This 9-tailed phoenix pin was extraordinarily splendid, and I was quite taken with it. The next moment, I plucked it out and pinned it into my own hair. What a pity. If Xianji knew in the afterlife that the woman he loved his entire life killed him with her own hands, then slandered him like this after his death. I wonder what he'd think. Speaking of which, I almost feel sorry for him. But today, I'm not here to talk about Xianji. I picked up the bronze mirror beside me, admiring the phoenix hairpin with delighted murmurs. Truly, a fine hairpin deserves a beauty to match, don't you agree, sister? Before Yueyao could respond, I continued speaking to myself. I came today because I pity you, sister. I want to tell you some truths. Sister, your beloved emperor deceived you. You will never have children. Never. The words had barely left my mouth when the only sound left was the crackling of charcoal in the brazier. The hall fell into an eerie silence. The next second, she lunged at me, but I dodged her effortlessly. Her face was pale, her body trembling. She tried to sound calm, but a hint of panic was clear. Shu, what do you mean? How dare you curse this palace? I smiled faintly and spoke plainly. Sister, what nonsense are you speaking? How could Shu dare curse you? I'm merely telling the truth. Your father was once the Khan of the Great Desert, commanding countless armies. Though he is dead, half your blood is that of the desert people. Have you never heard the saying, he who is not of our kind, his heart must be different? If you bear a child, who can guarantee the desert people won't harbor ill intentions? If they crown your child emperor to secure benefits for their northern lands, how could His Majesty ever permit it? Besides, the northern border has only known peace for a few short years. How could the emperor risk such a gamble? Therefore, His Majesty can shower you with boundless favor, but he can never grant you a child. Yet, sister, how can you fail to see the truth of the saying, when the fire is at its hottest, the oil boils over? His Majesty's mind is so meticulous. The fertility potions you drink daily are actually abortion potions. But you will never know the truth about those potions. Just as you consult the finest imperial physicians daily, yet they cannot uncover the truth. Because the entire Imperial Medical Bureau has only one master, His Majesty. Yueyao suddenly lunged at me, her hands digging into my shoulders. Her eyes, however, were filled with doubt and panic. It can't be. You're the one stirring up trouble, you wretch. After all these years of affection between me and the Emperor, he wouldn't do this to me. Absolutely not. I only wanted a child from him. Seeing me stand motionless under her grip, she suddenly let go, her eyes seeming to drift into memory. When I entered the palace to accompany my aunt, I saw the Emperor constantly being bullied. Though small and frail, his eyes shone brightly. Even when faced with the abuse of servants, he stood tall and straight. I couldn't stand it. So I took brutal revenge on everyone who had ever wronged him. Only then did his life in the palace begin to improve. He promised that once he became emperor, I would be his sole empress. Not only that, he vowed to make me the most favored empress in history, showering me with supreme affection. I would be his one and only woman. At first, I naturally didn't believe him. But when he spoke, his eyes held such profound devotion, as if gazing through eternity. I willingly aided him. He wanted the throne, so I persuaded my aunt, Consort Roan, to switch allegiances. I schemed relentlessly to win over ministers for him. Only through such perilous maneuvers did he seize the throne. Then she turned, drained of all vitality, dragging her feet step by step toward the bed. The bond between us, forged over so many years, how could a lowly whore like you possibly comprehend it? He said an imperial decree forbade me from becoming empress, but he could give me his one true love. I never cared about being some damn empress, all I wanted was his love, all of it. But after you arrived, everything changed. I could feel his heart slipping away from me. That day, he nearly smashed that jade pendant, our token of love, which I'd treasured for so many years. He just picked it up and was about to smash it. He seems to have forgotten anything can be smashed, but not that jade pendant. Perhaps there are too many treasures in the palace, he's grown accustomed to them and no longer remembers what truly matters. Or maybe there are too many women in the palace, and he's gradually forgotten who it was that stood by him from nothingness to the pinnacle of power. She sat down gently on the bed, and when she lifted her eyes again, they were already brimming with tears. Watching her, I recalled my last life after death, when my spirit saw her writing a letter to Shen. The letter said he had done well. It said my father and the wrong Imperial Consort's faction had long been at odds. And after the emperor ascended the throne and consolidated his power, the political views between him and my father grew even more incompatible. Father advocated benevolent governance, but the emperor deemed it weak-minded compassion. Thus, the emperor had long sought to eliminate father. Now, by eliminating my Shen clan, they not only ease her aunt's worries but also relieve the emperor's concerns. Heh, always for her emperor. So in my previous life, did my Shen family of hundreds deserve to have their blood run like rivers? Then, I leaned close and whispered softly into her ear, "Do you know why you became pregnant? Because I had someone secretly swap your medicinal broth. Do you know why your child vanished so suddenly? Because the emperor fed you pregnancy-sustaining herbs laced with safflower. Though your mother was Han, foreign blood flows through your veins. Did you truly believe the emperor would risk his throne by bearing a child with a foreigner? See? Such a simple truth, yet you couldn't see it, couldn't figure it out. Or perhaps you knew deep down, but you chose to gamble anyway, to test your place in his heart. Now you know, the emperor doesn't love you as much as you imagined. He loves no one. He loves only himself." Hearing this, she stared at me in utter disbelief, her eyes wide with horror. Then, clutching her head, she screamed loudly, crying and laughing like a madwoman. Her voice was shrill, like that of a vengeful spirit. "You see, no matter how much you love someone, you should never treat another's life as worthless or a tool for flattery." She loved the emperor too much, so much that she lost herself. Now that she knew the truth, her fiery spirit could no longer bear to feign affection for the emperor. Her time was up. I pulled the phoenix hairpin from my bun, tossed it beside her, and slipped away quietly. I knew those with overly upright natures never lived long. And what I excelled at most was killing with words. Yueyao was dead. The very night I left, she set herself ablaze in Yueyao Palace. They say the palace burned for a full day and night, her remains reduced to charred ashes. When palace attendants carried out her body, her charred hands still clutched the jade pendant, the token of her love with the emperor. When the emperor came to my palace, his face was ashen. He held me tightly, his voice breaking. Then he looked at me and asked if he had made a mistake. My heart ached for him. I kissed him. "Your Majesty is the Son of Heaven. The Son of Heaven never errs. Your Majesty, you are weary. Allow your concubine to help you rest." He inhaled the pear blossom fragrance filling the chamber, sighed, yet obediently lay down upon my bed. After several of my provocations, he rolled over, pinning me beneath him. The scent of desire instantly engulfed us. The earlier sorrow had long since dissolved into a trembling, deep kiss. Beneath the trembling bed curtains, I laughed with such unrestrained joy for the first time. Yet as I laughed, tears began to fall. The man she had loved her entire life, others could so easily steal his heart with mere trifles. For the first time, I felt such pity for Yueyao. "Yueyao, oh Yueyao, look, this is the man you loved your whole life. If memory serves, your bones should still be warm." After Yueyao's death, pregnancies among the palace consorts suddenly multiplied. Deprived of Yueyao and with a fresh batch of new beauties entering the palace, the emperor grew far more reckless. 2 months later, he summoned 3 consorts simultaneously to the Hall of Mental Cultivation. Upon hearing this, the Empress Dowager reprimanded him the very next day, declaring his behavior reckless and a violation of ancestral traditions. Naturally, as his nominal mother, she had to make a show of discipline. Yet she never truly punished him. I, however, had long since feigned illness, claiming a chill had left me oblivious to the world, and kept myself well hidden. The emperor professed remorse, but behind closed doors, his antics continued unabated. He merely shifted his focus, secretly visiting the concubines' quarters instead. As for me, protecting the concubines was my duty. These newly arrived women were nominally the daughters of ministers. In truth, they were emaciated horses I'd painstakingly purchased under false names from Yangzhou Prefecture. Each was more radiant than a flower, vividly beautiful, ethereal, pure, and alluring. As the overseer of the imperial selection, I had arranged everything meticulously, ensuring they entered the palace as daughters of low-ranking ministers. In the emperor's eyes, their maternal families held such insignificant status that he felt no need to fear them. Given this, he could simply indulge in the pleasures of the moment with these beauties. Their purpose, however, was to drain the emperor's vitality through every conceivable means. Without the restraints of reason or loyal ministers, the fiery passion he possessed as a prince gradually eroded within the embrace of these soft, fragrant beauties. They say dying beneath the peony blossoms makes one a romantic ghost. Song Huaijin, do you like the grand gift I've given you? Soon, half a year passed, and the palace welcomed 2 new princesses and a prince, a rare cause for great celebration. The emaciated emperor was overjoyed, immediately designating the prince as crown prince. Yet his life force, gnawed away by suhexiang incense and carnal indulgences, had long been slowly drained. In the suhexiang delivered by the imperial physicians, I always added a sedative spice. Over time, it inevitably caused dazed disorientation and a growing craving for wine and women. His favorite pear fragrance conveniently masked the scent of the spice. That was why he had grown increasingly fond of visiting me, and increasingly enamored with my tender embrace. Under the diligent service of several slender maids, the emperor soon began drinking dear blood wine. He even had the imperial physicians secretly prescribe him secret potions to strengthen his body. One day, 2 months later, the emperor collapsed and died immediately after rising from one of his consorts. After examination, the imperial physicians shook their heads in unison, declaring there was no hope for recovery. I kept vigil by his bedside, feeding him bowl after bowl of medicinal broth. Together with the other consorts, I feigned tears streaming like pear blossoms. Now that a crown prince had been chosen, Song Huaijin, my presence could no longer be tolerated. That night, I dismissed all the other consorts and fed him his final bowl of broth. He looked at me, smiled, and drank it down. But the very next moment, he clutched my hand tightly. It was a potent, highly nourishing concoction, but his body, already weakened beyond repair, couldn't withstand it. He gripped my hand with deathly force. My eyes turned bloodshot as I stared at him fiercely. Song Huaijin, not a single soul in this harem ever loved you. The one who loved you most is dead, she set herself ablaze, burning herself to ashes. Song Huaijin, you are cold-hearted by nature. Everyone who ever supported you, you turned your blade against them in the end. This is your retribution. In my past life, you slaughtered hundreds of my Shen clan on trumped-up charges. In this life, I shall take charge of this realm for you. His bulging eyes glared at me, bloodshot and wild, yet he could utter no more words. His hand, clenched around mine, slowly dropped, never to rise again. Yes, I despised Yueyao. I hated Yueyao. But I hated Song Huaijin even more. In my past life, my soul witnessed my parents' and elder brothers' heads being severed. Their only crime was being too loyal. Yet in Song Huaijin's eyes, this heartfelt devotion to the nation was treason, was rebellion. Song Huaijin, you truly do not deserve to be emperor. 9 tolls of the funeral bells sounded. The next day, the imperial city was turned upside down. The young prince was too young to rule, so the Empress Dowager assumed regency. Both reason and sentiment left the ministers with no grounds to object. Those who stubbornly refused were beheaded, and the rest fell silent. Thus, I became the youngest Empress Dowager in history. With ministers to assist in state affairs, I felt at ease. After court, as I handed the infant emperor to his wet nurse, a familiar eunuch hobbled over to present tea. My face lit up the moment I recognized him. Wasn't this Yueyao? He knelt trembling, not daring utter a word. Oh right, his tongue had long been cut out. How could he speak? I leaned close and whispered softly in his ear, Yueyao, that day I had someone save your life early on, it wasn't for nothing. You're handsome, so I sold you straight into the Nanfeng Pavilion. I hear you're quite popular with the young masters from distinguished families. What a pity you tried to escape in the end. Each time you ran, they broke another bone. They nearly beat you to death, and once again, it was I who saved you. Now I've severed your line of descendants and arranged for you to enter the palace. See? What a blessing this is for you. However, death is inevitable, and punishment must be meted out. I recall that in Yueyao's palace, there was a eunuch who also favored handsome young pages. I specifically transferred him to Shokong Palace. He will treat you well. From now on, you will be with him. As she finished speaking, a sleazy eunuch beside her hastily knelt to express gratitude. I nodded. That eunuch immediately dragged Yueyao away, retreating as if hauling a dog. Soon after, a piercing scream erupted from the servants' quarters, startling several birds into flight. Sipping my tea, I casually rewarded the palace maid and eunuch who served it with a handful of gold melon seeds. The reason was simple: today's tea was exceptionally sweet and fragrant. The story ends here. Thank you all for your company. See you in the next chapter.